My name is Amy, and I had bariatric surgery in January of 2020. I am at this point 4.5 years post op, and I successfully lost 100% of my excess body weight. Pre op, I weighed a little over 260 pounds, so my BMI was around 48 for my height. And when I stopped losing weight, which took about 18 months, I was hovering around 117, which put me at a BMI of 21. Now, 4.5 years later, kind of hover around 125, which puts me at a BMI of 22. So I started gaining my weight in my mid to late 20s. Just a lot of factors played into it. And what I just kind of stopped taking care of myself the way that I needed to. And I finally got a wake up call actually from a gynecologist of all things, where I was just going in for my regular annual appointment, and she kind of put the facts in front of my face and said, look how much weight you've gained in a year. This isn't okay. This isn't healthy. And at first I was kind of taken aback and kind of offended, but I really took what she said on board and thought about it after that appointment. I said, she's right. And so over the years, I had tried a lot of different things. I mean, there's so much information out there. There's so many fad diets and fad workouts. And, you try something and you lose 5, 10 pounds, but then, it really doesn't stick. And so I really started looking into, what's the most evidence-based ways that I could really make a change in my life. And that's where I landed on bariatric surgery. What I didn't know with all the research I did was that weeks after I had my surgery in January 2020, the world shut down. And so a lot of those follow-up appointments and, even support groups and things that folks might normally be involved in post-operatively, I really wasn't able to do any of that. I thankfully was able to talk to my surgeon and the PA via email and via text. And thankfully, I had a very, very smooth recovery process. But I was very, very much on my own for that first, I want to say, year of just kind of keeping track of things myself and keeping myself accountable and looking up what to expect and what to prepare for. And I just had to keep a journal for myself and charts and graphs and all those good things. And thankfully for me, it worked really well. My top tips for anybody who's looking to go down the bariatric surgery journey would be number one, record everything. Keeping track of stuff is your best friend. Record your food, record your drinks, record your exercise, record your weight and your measurements and all of those things. Because not only does it help keep you accountable, but it helps you see that progress over the long haul. Day to day, you may not necessarily lose any weight from one day to the next. You may actually gain, a pound or two from one day to the next. But if you really keep track of things completely objectively, you will see that trend and you will see what is working for you and what isn't. Again, very objectively. So you're not going off of feelings, you're going off of those facts. Also, number two, I would say get moving as much as possible, as soon as possible post-operatively, even if it's just getting up and walking around for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you can tolerate. Not only does it help you heal, but it helps you burn more calories, and it helps your mood. It helps you feel like you're, getting somewhere and doing something. Number three, I would say view changes as an adventure. Instead of something holding you back, you're going to have to make changes to your daily routine, to your eating habits, the types of things you eat, the ways that you eat, the ways that you exercise. And so you if you look at it as a challenge, it will feel like one. If you look at it as an exciting new adventure, it will feel like one. So enjoy the process of researching new recipes and new exercises and a new park to go check out and things like that. Celebrate milestones would be another suggestion I have. It's going to be a very long process and it's not always going to be fun or pretty. My one cautionary note would be don't celebrate with food. So find some other way to reward yourself when you reach certain milestones and set those for yourself, whether that's an amount of weight or a certain BMI or a certain amount of time, whatever that is. Set those kind of incremental rewards for yourself. And then lastly, I would say remind yourself why you're doing this. Uh, Bariatric surgery is absolutely an investment. And just like any other investment, that means that you need to give up something small in the immediate to gain a greater reward in the future. If you keep that mindset, then you will keep that forward progression. What kept me on track with limited, kind of traditional support was uh, seeking support in, I guess, non-traditional ways. I, really did diligence to look for helpful articles, blogs, uh, YouTube, anything like that. There's so many people who are really, really sharing their journey, whether it is specifically bariatric focused or even folks just sharing um, recipe ideas or different exercise routines or things like that. And by spending so much time looking for those resources and looking for those things that clicked for me and helped for me, I ended up, inevitably you find your favorites. And so now I do have my favorite YouTube channels that I use for workout videos. And I have my favorite content creators as far as the recipes that they make. And so, you kind of gain that parasocial support in that respect, where it's like you don't know them personally, but it is somewhat of a comfort to say, like, okay, I'm looking forward to the new workout that so and so posted and trying that because it's been working so well for me. And then just people who are sharing in their bariatric journeys, it can help you feel not as isolated. If you are the only person in your immediate sphere that's kind of going through this, it can be so helpful to read those articles, read those blog posts from people who are there currently or have been there before and can give a voice to a feeling that you're having or a struggle that you're having that feels so foreign to maybe your immediate support system around you.
Okay, so I actually had my sleep pandemic also, so I had the same kind of space. So I can speak to that kind of more of like patients outside of my experience, if that's okay. Just because I'm going to touch on a lot of the same things that she had, but um, so for myself, I really lucked out because being in the medical field, and then also as I was a nurse manager on a bariatric unit, so I had a lot of bariatric resources available to me. A key pivotal person for me in my recovery was Dr. Mike Williams here in Atlanta because I did have a couple complications post-op, or like little stubborn things that would happen. And when you know things, you sometimes know too much. So I was always in my head and trying to like diagnose the things that really aren't there and like freaking out. So it's that for me, it was really meaningful to have somebody who's actually doing the surgeries that is like, girl, if you don't get a hold of yourself, to really kind of ease that through. And I think the game changer, for me, was creating a daily schedule that supported my desired outcomes because you don't really know, like, you're not really aware how much you socialize with food, how much you connect to food, and how all of these things and you interact with things in your day to day relationships, everything like that is connected a lot of times centered around that. So I had to create a kind of like a daily routine that was beneficial and supportive of my desired outcomes. And I think the joy that I had, or the ease I should say, within that is that it was COVID for me. So the world was shut down. So I couldn't say like, let's go to a restaurant and let's go have drinks and let's do these things. I was forced into my bubble, which, can be isolating in one way, but also it could be empowering in another, because I had no opportunity to really make the decision. The decision to not socialize around these things was made for me. So it came down to an accountability piece on myself of picking the right things and making sure that I was utilizing all of the knowledge that I had. Um, and then allowing myself to grieve, because there is a huge space of grieving after a bariatric surgery from my experience. And I never really got that until I became a patient. Um, so, three tips for I have that I would give to patients as both a professional in the medical industry, or medical field, I should say. I'm a registered nurse, and then also as a bariatric patient. First one would be to give yourself grace, because especially as you start to research more and your body's changing, and you might have moments where you stall, or moments of frustration where, like, Amy was saying, you might gain a couple pounds and you're like, how am I gaining weight when I haven't eaten anything? Things like that, or things that you had in your mind that you could use as outlets for protein or things like that. You can't tolerate them anymore. You do get really frustrated. And it can kind of be heightened if you start to research things, and then you start comparing yourself, and then you start to think, like, I had this milestone and I'm not there yet, and this person says that they were there at this much, and don't compare, and give yourself grace. So that would be my very first tip to be successful, is to allow yourself the space to be. And leading into my second point, or I guess tip of advice, there's a lot of insurances, for instance, that request a psych eval. And I know when I was working within bariatric practices after I left the unit, I was on, patients always griped and moaned about that. And I couldn't really understand the connection. But in being a patient, the grieving process that you go through, the shifts, and a lot of times you have a connection with food that is trauma bonded. And you have a lot of things that, as you can no longer turn to those things for coping, you have really huge shifts within your well-being, because you find yourself kind of grappling, like, this is all being taken away. So you lose sight of what it is, like the journey you're on, because you're still at a loss. You're losing weight, you're losing all these things. And for me, it was, really rapid. Like, I would have a month where I might lose 27 pounds, and then I would, the next month was 16. So your body image and your mental and how you connect with change, for me, was with food. You don't have that. So having a safe space to really allow yourself to unpack, is pivotal, because you want to make sure that you are set up for success. So you don't turn to the wrong things, or find a new thing that's not really effective in supporting your outcomes, to become that piece for you. So really owning your space and getting a safe space, and having, if it's not like a therapist, or something along those lines, to really digest and unpack what it is you're going through. Like, it's more than just the surgery. It is a mind, body, and spiritual shift. Like, complete 180. You're going to be living a different life for the rest of your life. So that would be my second. Third, kind of playing off of what Amy said, is remember your why and really stay focused on that, because in your discouraging spaces and your moments where when you're losing weight rapidly, sometimes you look at yourself and you really don't know, like, who exactly is looking back at you, and all the changes you've made, and it's rapid change very quickly. It's easy to quit, and it's easy when you are put into those moments where you are challenged, and those challenging moments will come. Like, when the world opened back up for me, it was my friends, hey girl, do you want to go to dinner? We're sitting there, and I don't have a stomach to eat a full meal. So it's, how do I look like I'm eating when I'm not eating, but how can I still enjoy the moment of being present with food and my friends? And how do those things happen? So staying focused on my why really helped me when I'm out, and making healthy choices at those spaces, making sure that I'm eating my protein and going into my vegetables, or whatever that looked like creating a new routine based in my why, when I started to come back out into my space. So those would definitely be my three tips. Um, I think from a perspective of, both patient and medical, I think a lot of reasons why people don't succeed is because they're not set up for success. We live in a microwave world where we all want these immediate outcomes, and it's easy to deflect the blame when something doesn't happen immediately. And I remember so many patients who would convert from a sleeve to a bypass, or they'd gain their weight back, and all of these things, and it was always the surgeon's fault, and it was always these external factors, but there's a huge self accountability piece with this. And you have to set yourself up for success because you have to make sure your mind is in that the right space to go through the changes you're going through, that you're really bought into your plan, because this is about you and about your lifestyle and about your health and wellness as much as it is about somebody else that's going to be supporting your journey. Um, so self ownership and accountability, I say, is going to be your biggest thing. And there's so many pieces tied to this puzzle for you when you're going into it. We think immediately the weight loss, the outcome, and the goal, but the pieces that of the puzzle that aren't really tied into it is, after your weight loss visits are completed, how are you implementing all of your knowledge into your new life, your new lifestyle? What does your life look like if you have if you're in a space where everybody's in an unhealthy state of being and all there is unhealthy things around you all the time, you're not going to find the support for that to get yourself to success. So setting yourself up for success in all facets, mental, physical, emotional, supporting yourself and creating those structures on each tier, I think it makes the world of difference with your success. And when you give yourself grace within those moments, your stumbles, they're not failures. They go to your growth, and it's a learning opportunity. And you can always step back and say, what can I take from this so that doesn't happen again? And how can I make it strong? Like, how can I do better in going forward? But if you don't set yourself up for success to be able to have those conversations with yourself and to really be aware of what your process looks like, it's going to be really difficult to be successful, regardless of what things can help speed up your microwave effect of weight loss, right? So that would be my pointer. So Amy, how did you become your own support system through this, and how can you encourage others to do the same?
Research is really your best friend as far as looking for resources online, finding, whether it's Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok. There's so many amazing people out there that are creating content that can kind of help resonate with you, whether it's bariatric specific or just kind of, health, wellness, the exercise, healthy recipes in general. One of the things that I thought of, it's kind of funny because I've never thought about this before until Nicole, I was listening to your story, is that you talked about how your medical background kind of helped you through your personal journey. I never thought about this until just now, which is really silly. But in my previous career, before my current career, I was actually a licensed therapist, and so I think in a lot of ways I was able to put a lot of that, cognitive behavioral, keep yourself accountable, look at, what's driving this, what's behind it, what's working for you and what isn't, that checking in with yourself, that, you know, what's benefiting you and what isn't, who are we pointing the finger at, and are we pointing the finger at ourselves first and foremost? That, the idea of extreme accountability. There always will be an excuse if you look for one, but at the end of the day, what do I have control over? And so I probably took for granted a lot of that, education and experience that I had, where I was able to kind of utilize that to keep myself on track.
That's awesome. Did you find yourself leaning on anyone or anything for support that you didn't expect?
I was never a big social media person, but kind of through that process of COVID and, everybody's lives, the routine was upended anyway. And so it's like you find yourself at home and, what do I do and how do I engage and how do I figure these things out? And so I never had really thought of myself as like, a diehard YouTube type of person, but I did end up finding a couple of YouTube channels where they every day they put out these, high intensity interval training workout videos that just really, really worked for me. And I just found myself really enjoying them and looking forward to what's the next workout going to be. And, just even to see that change in myself was so amazing because I was never the kind of person that was like, what do you mean you're looking forward to working out? And now I am that person, like you were talking about, where it's like you have to make legitimate changes to your daily routine if you want to see that success. You really have to, the surgery is on your stomach, but the change has to happen in your mind if you want that success in the long run.
Did you find yourself like, I know for me, like the one thing I struggled with the most was protein because I couldn't I was a vegetarian going into this, and I found a lot of the stuff that I could tolerate out of it, I couldn't going into it, sorry, I couldn't tolerate anymore. Like what were things for you that you struggled with post-op?
I had a very similar struggle because I would say that I was predominantly vegetarian beforehand as well. And so I had to kind of completely revamp the way that I ate. At least for me personally, I was mostly vegetarian just based on like preference. Uh, so I had to really kind of push myself out of my comfort zone to try different sources of protein and kind of expand my horizons in that respect. At least what ended up working for me personally was I follow a keto diet basically. And that's just because when I really got honest with myself about what my you know food imbalance, I guess, was very carbohydrate focused. It was like a lot of breads, a lot of sweets, a lot of things like that. And so by cutting carbs considerably and focusing more on protein, along with doing that interval training, I was basically focusing that the weight loss period on burn fat, build muscle, because you'll see folks who they just try to eat smaller amounts of the already unhealthy food they were eating, which will work for a while, but then you don't necessarily look healthy. You just kind of look gaunt because you're
Like droopy.
yeah. Uh, you're not you're not building that lean muscle that you need, which also benefits your metabolism. So it doubly helps you stay on track. And so I desperately didn't want to just have the droopy look. I wanted to look healthy. That's the point of this, right? Is to get healthier. And so I really did have to expand my horizons. Thankfully, I didn't have a lot of sensitivities or any issues with food. The only thing that I noticed, because I know that people talk about like their tastes and their preferences will change, I became like a water snob for a while. I'm better about it now, but for a while there was like one brand of water. It was like the only water I could handle, and everything else just like tasted disgusting to me.
I can totally relate to that. I was the exact same way, and then I'd switch it out. I'm like, oh no, no, I don't drink that anymore. Like, like this one over here. It's that sense of control. It gives you something, right?
I don't know, take it up with the pouch. I'm just on this ride.
That's so funny. Like, if you could pick one thing from your journey so far, what would you do differently and why?
That's something I've been asked a few times, and it sounds like such a cheesy answer, but it's so true. I think the only thing that I would change is that I would do it sooner. For me, it's been such a positive experience in every possible way. That I really, but it's it's nerve wracking. It's a big undertaking, and so it took me a while to kind of get up the nerve to actually go in and sit down and say, "Let's do this." And I really wish I had been able to do it sooner because it's just been such a phenomenal transformation for me.
That's awesome. I love that. I think, looking at my experience, I think the one thing I would have done differently is to stay on my vitamins. Because I really struggled with, for some reason I just found that it was really hard to find a brand that wasn't the size of like a horse pill. Like they were so big, they always got stuck. I couldn't like I just would get in a routine, and I went like a period without that. And then when I went into a space for me where I had no protein and my vitamins were not being taken. You know, you go through that period where like, okay, well, I didn't gain weight after I ate that, so I could skip this and then I'll be okay. And I definitely did that. I was the non-compliant patient and also the nurse that tells you to be compliant. So it was the biggest oxymoron ever. But you know, for me, it was that because I ended up losing a lot of my hair. It was the shedding I lost. I had patches that was there was just nothing. Like I had my hair was, you know, about waist length, and I came out of that with like hair to here, and the curl pattern was gone. It was just dry, brittle, and I cried and I cried and I cried, and I was like, I can't blame anybody but myself. Like I was on my one fear happened, and it was all because of my own doing because I didn't keep my protein up and I wasn't taking my vitamins. So I went into a lot of like nutrient deficiencies and it was my own doing. So that would be my my takeaway to do differently from my journey. Um, you know, I'm probably not like it's probably the most positive thing, but I'm transparent in kind of where that is. So um
Yeah, there's a reason they tell us to do those things.
I'm like, you know, it's like for me, it was like it's always been potatoes. So I was like, oh, if I ate mashed potatoes today and I didn't gain any weight, then I'm okay. And then I'm like, ooh, let's skip it. And then it's like, girl, you're going right back down the drain. So you know, it's I would do that, definitely do that differently. I wouldn't have taken for granted that my body is just not going to produce as much of what it needs for the rest of my life. You know, I definitely um I'm not surprised I did that because I've always been that child that has like, don't touch the burner. And I'm like, let me just see if it's hot. That's just who I am. But it's a true thing. So I would take the advice that I already knew and do my work a little bit harder. Um, so how can people ask for support in this journey if they need it, but they're afraid to?
You know what's interesting is that you're far less alone than you think you are. When I went in to have my surgery, I had told two people. I had my friend who was picking me up from the surgery, and I had another friend that I asked to come check on me that evening since it's outpatient. And I lived alone at the time, so I was like, "Can you just come make sure I don't like die in my condo?" and, um, those were the only two people on earth that knew I was doing this because I had this, romanticized idea in my head that, no one will know that I did this thing and they'll just think that I'm gradually losing weight and I'll just tell them like, oh, I'm, working out, I'm doing keto and all this stuff. And then the world shut down and I didn't see anybody for months. And then when I did see people, I had a mask on. So then my own friends would walk right past me. They didn't recognize me because I physically looked so different. Obviously, I had different clothes because I went from a size 22 to a 2, in the process of 18 months. And so it wasn't until I spoke that they would be like, oh my gosh, hey, they didn't recognize me. So there was no getting away with it. So something that I wanted to keep a secret, I ended up having to tell everyone. And what's the amazing thing when you're open with people about this journey is how many people already in your life have either already done this or are thinking about it. And so you find out, so many people that you never would have guessed are like, oh yeah, I did that 10 years ago. I did that 8 years ago. I did that 15 years ago. And they tell you about their story. It's like, you're part of this secret club. And I can't tell you how many people just in my day to day life, because I've been open about it, I have inspired them to ask me the questions they were always curious about. And now they have done it as well. And it's just really funny when you're open about your journey, how many people you end up finding out are somewhere along that same journey as well. And so that would be my encouragement: is don't keep it a secret. Talk to your people. Have a support system in place for yourself. I have a wonderful group of kind of four best friends who none of them have had bariatric surgery or are planning on it, but I got honest with them eventually, and they've just been like so fantastic because I can share the good, bad, the ugly with them because they're my friends. We've shared the good, bad, and the ugly about everything else in life together. And they made it so easy to still get together by just being able to have the conversation overtly about like, okay, well, what can you eat? What would be a good restaurant? Let's get together and have a potluck. What would be something that I could make that you could eat? And things like that. And so instead of feeling like a burden, they've never done that. They've always kind of taken me on board with love and said, we're with you and we want to support you, of course. And those are the kinds of relationships that you want to foster.
Absolutely.
When I had my gastric sleeve surgery in January 2020, I was in the capable hands of Dr. Suda. I found him online, just doing research as far as who I wanted to partner with to uh, embark on this journey, and I'm so glad that I chose him. He and his staff were absolutely fantastic. I had a wonderful experience, and even though the world shut down right after I had my surgery, they had already given me so many resources and booklets and things like that that were really able to help keep me on track. So I am incredibly grateful to him.
Yeah, no, that's very kind of Amy to say. I think the key word that she said was staff. As a surgeon, I can't do everything and be everywhere. And so I'm very fortunate to have a very, very great staff, including my office staff and my physician assistant, Brian Grace, who's just phenomenal and has a great fund of knowledge and experience in this area. I just want to say it's really great to hear from patients like Amy and Nicole. We forget sometimes are at the start of the journey with many of these patients with the surgery and the lead up to it. And then we have some touch points afterwards, but they are the ones who are living this journey every day with themselves, with the ups and downs. And we might see little snapshots of it, but um, it's really them who has to experience this whole thing with their life. So it's great to get this perspective a lot of time. Also, feel like I have nothing to add because they covered the whole gamut of what to do and support and how to deal with pitfalls. And I'm also very deficient in cats, I noticed. So I feel like I don't belong. Um, I'll try to get one for next time. But one question that comes up because we talked about limited support, and Amy started her journey at the beginning of interesting time with COVID. And to be honest, things have really changed. Before COVID, at least in our metropolitan area, the in-person support group was very common, and we used to do 4 in-person seminars for prospective patients. And during that 2 year period of shutdown, that really went along the wayside. But something amazing did happen, and Amy and Nicole touched upon this, which is that we are fortunate to live in a world now that has an extraordinary number of resources at the touch of our fingers, whether it's our phones or our computers. And there is support out there, whether it's places like Bariatric Corner or other types of support groups that are virtual that people can access. Not that it's a substitute for being in touch with your program, with your clinical team, and of course the people who are closest to you. But that information and that support is available. You just got to be a little careful because support can be or information can be a double-edged sword, right? If you're someone who's looking for failures, why people don't succeed after bariatric surgery, you can find those things online. And if you're looking for inspiration, the people who have done extraordinarily well, like Amy and Nicole, then you will focus on those things. So one thing about support is looking inside always and asking yourself the question if this is the right support for you. Because I have patients that come in and their entire family, extended family, have had bariatric surgery, right? And you might get the impression that they have a fantastic support group. Maybe, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe some of the people are closest to them who have had the same surgery may not be right for them for a variety of reasons. And so sometimes going outside of your immediate circle can be a better support. And so we try to gauge that and assess that also with our patients. Is what kind of support, what kind of feeling are you getting from the people that you're interacting with? Are they really boosting you up? Or are they really supporting you when you're down, or is something else happening? So you have to be aware of that. It's really come about more in this very interesting time because we have now these weight loss drugs, the GLP-1 agonist drugs and other drugs that are becoming very popular. And patients or more people are starting to look into weight loss and be interested in weight loss. And sometimes it's patients who are kind of deciding between drugs or surgery, or have tried these pharmacologic agents, have had some success, but realized that for a variety of reasons they can't stay on it. So now they're looking at bariatric surgery. And the most common question by far, and this has been true from the beginning for me anyway, is am I going to gain weight after the surgery? And it's a natural question, right? I'm committing myself to this procedure. There's risks involved in it. It's going to change my body. There's a financial aspect to it. Is it going to work? And then is it going to get away? And the question is valid because people, again, they look online, they talk to people, and almost everyone can find examples around them, whether it's online or in person in their social or professional networks. They have had bariatric surgery and maybe didn't have the success that they wanted or gained a little weight. The truth of the matter is that most patients who get bariatric surgery are very successful and improve the quality of life and get rid of their medical problems. But of course, there's going to be patients who may have lost weight initially and gained the weight back. And that's always going to be the case with any procedure or medical intervention. Nothing's 100%. So it's important for your clinical team to be very upfront and transparent about that with patients, that for a variety of reasons this can happen. So how to answer that question is, yes, there are patients for which this surgery initially works and they gain weight back, or they don't lose as much weight as they thought they were going to lose. But it's important to remember that the fundamental way that these surgeries work are the same way that the medications for weight loss work, the same way that diet and exercise work, by changing your caloric intake, changing the way that your body uses calories. And so the formulas are still the same, right? And for that reason, support is important, as we talked about, but understanding that one of the most common reasons why people fail is not so much that something happened to their body over time, but that they may not have been prepared for something, a fact that the human body has an amazing ability to adapt. And so if you get injured and you break a bone, and you heal that, your body adapts. If we take out your gallbladder, your appendix adapts. And the same thing goes with bariatric surgery, is that we do something to fundamentally change your body and the way your metabolism works. But the fact is, many patients will adapt, their physical bodies will adapt to the surgery, and they may use calories more efficiently. They may not have as much restriction that they had in the beginning. And so patients have to be very prepared for that going in. When I was first exposed to bariatric surgery in 2001, when I was an intern, that was 23 years ago, the very first surgeon I saw perform surgery said, "This is a tool." And we've been repeating that phrase all the way through until today. But sometimes I even forget what that means. And what it means is that this gets you started on your journey, but you cannot rely on it exclusively to help you maintain a healthy weight for the rest of your life. That you have to make a significant and permanent lifestyle change in order to maintain that weight, and support's important for that, and that understanding is important for that. The patients that I see do the best, who are fantastically successful, like Amy and Nicole, and the many others who I've seen done wonderful. It's good that you mentioned mindset, because they really do flip a switch and their life does change. Their priorities and how they look at themselves and their lives do change. And I'm only saying this from what they have told me and what Amy and Nicole have shared here, which is the things that used to kind of boost them or make them feel good and so forth. It's no longer necessarily food, but it's other things. And you can have a healthy relationship with food, and food's essential, and healthy food's important for growth and fitness. But then the focus changes a little bit, and it's on being your healthiest self, and that may involve exercise, it may involve activity, it may involve fitness, it may involve eating differently, healthier, and more naturally. And so the people that we see do the best really do make that mindset change. And they have a measure of accountability, whether it's making sure that they tell us and show us, their success over time by sending us stories and pictures, which we love, or posting it on social media so people can see and enjoy the success that they've had and maybe gain inspiration for that. But we have had patients who, were 3, 4, 500 pounds and now do 5 or 10K runs, or even longer marathons or half marathons, or become bikers, or they don't even have to be super athletes. We have patients who get out with their spouses in the evenings and walk around their block a few times. And that's something that they never were able to do. And so that's what we like to see is people really change their perspective on what life is for them and where they sort of gain that satisfaction.